This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barnes. Today we're going to be talking about a poll that shows that Americans want mass deportation. So I wonder what will happen, assuming that Trump wins, and will they be able to go through with it? I assume that even if Trump wants to do mass deportation, there would be all these kind of blocks that he would have. But if there's like a mandate from the people, and it's not all, how it was with people crying at the border and stuff, originally, and they see the need of trying to get our border under control, will they, allow what needs to be done? But with reports of people with ties to ISIS escaping into the not escaping, they were detained and released, but then they did find them. But how very concerning, because how many people did they not round up or pop up flagged eventually? So we'll be talking about that news story as well. Also, we talked the other day about some people's reaction to the rescuing of the Israeli hostages, and there's this libertarian comedian Dave Smith who's had some takes that I definitely have not liked, and some I've found to be really dumb, but everyone was praising him over his debate with like Cuomo and Chris Cuomo a couple weeks ago. But we'll just go through some of his tweets that are really silly. And Lia Thomas has to compete with the boys. He tried to appeal to make it so he could compete in women's sports, and it just didn't work out for him. So we'll be talking about those things today. Before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost to stream and run my website and all that. So you guys can support. I do very much appreciate it. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can do super chats and all that stuff. Again, does really support if you can, but the best way to directly give is to go to the website. If you want any kind of merch, you guys can also get some on the website, like this cool "The Constitution is Glorious Liberty" document, Frederick Douglass shirt. We got mugs and some pro-life stuff. We got this "You Are Not That Special" mug. You want to humble someone in your life in the cutest way possible. You guys can check out that stuff at the site on the website. I do have different books I encourage you guys to check out. I have 18 altogether. Most are fiction. I have 2 nonfiction books, which one of them is, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, which I encourage you guys to check out and look into. One of my fiction books, my newest one, is The Sea Witch, which is a sequel to The Dark Mermaid. So this is my author's copy. That's why there's an ugly strip right there. But you will not have that ugly strip there. This was just something that Amazon sent me some weeks ago. So anyway, I do have some memes for you guys to share. I haven't had any in a minute, so I saw a couple that made me chuckle, and I like to, share a good meme when I see you guys. So, first, well, this one wasn't really one that made me chuckle. Let me show you the one that made me chuckle. It said gay people are legal currency now, and they said we accept you, and there's a rainbow with the U with the the pride flag. So they're pandering so much that their signs don't even look great. So anyway, I just thought it was worth a chuckle, that one. But a meme here that was being shared by this guy. This is what's scary. It says this guy is a professor, an attorney, a historian, and likes philosophy, theology, all that stuff, has almost 100,000 followers. And he posted this about Hunter Biden comparing him to Kyle Rittenhouse. Bought a gun and had it for 11 days, neither shot or killed anyone, terrible law breaking criminal. And then you have Kyle Rittenhouse, had a gun he possessed, illegally shot 3, killed 2, hailed as a hero by the right wing gun nuts. So, the gun thing was, Hunter has done far worse than the gun situation. They had him dead to rights on the gun. And again, they tried to get him off with a sweetheart deal to just basically make the gun charge fall off and make the tax stuff go away. But it all got blown up. So they did try to get him away scot-free. Couldn't quite get there. And his dumb butt had all this evidence, text messages. Some people are saying that people aren't charged with this at all. And Hunter Biden was only charged for falsifying on the form to get the gun because he's, the president's son and the Republicans want blood, etc. Blah blah blah. That's not true. They do charge people for it. They probably don't charge enough people for it because you cannot keep saying that we need new gun laws and then just be all lax on people who break them and not prosecute them. If your thing is gonna be like, we need all these laws, why do we need more laws if you guys don't even want to prosecute people when they actually break the laws? So Hunter Biden, he lied on this form. He was clearly on drugs. Lied about it. It is what it is, right? And then his girlfriend, who was his brother's widow, threw the gun away near his school, just disposed of it in a manner that she should not have. And then I believe the Secret Service came in and got the gun, picked it up. So yes, he did break the law. He did. Kyle Rittenhouse, they keep trying to rewrite history, even as it was happening. That's why it's disturbing that this person who posted it is a historian, according to this profile. I'm not too familiar with the man, but people say, oh, he crossed state lines. Basically he lived on the border. He worked in that state. There are people who travel. One of the people he shot traveled far to get to that riot. Kyle was there that day cleaning up graffiti, volunteered to look after someone's shop because crazy people were burning down the city and vandalizing and stuff. So he and other people decided to help out a minority business, I believe. And it became the worst night of his life. And he had to shoot and kill to survive people who were trying to harm him. Someone who was determined to kill him, or at least claimed that they were going to do that. As far as him being a hero, I think people maybe gave him a bit too much hype, but people were very concerned. I was very concerned. My highest video to date was during the Kyle Rittenhouse, as far as streaming live and people watching all at once. It was me going through Kyle Rittenhouse and situation and the actual rioting of that night and why he felt compelled to be there to defend businesses, and just playing different clips of the riots that were going on. So he was just acting as a good Samaritan. You could say he was a kid and he shouldn't have been there. That's really a decision that the adults around and whatever. I don't think his mom didn't have prior knowledge of him deciding to do that. But he himself wanting to help people is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. People setting stuff on fire, chasing people down, trying to kill him, hurt him and stuff, that's obviously not a good thing. And he defended himself. People respect his trigger discipline. He showed extraordinary trigger discipline. People respect the fact that he was being a good Samaritan, and of course things went south. He's still young. He's made a lot of mistakes. He said some things. I'm like, kid, like calm the frick down. Just calm down. Um, Still got some growing to do, but people were concerned about how his case would affect gun rights overall, how it would affect self-defense, especially since there was all this evidence that this kid defended himself, shot in self-defense, yet he still had to be dragged through the whole court process, and people were very concerned that he would not be able to get off. And what would that mean? And then there was all this narrative. Joy Reid once did a report on Kyle Rittenhouse, and she ended with like, "Ooh, this is why we need critical race theory." And people might be like, "What the heck does critical race theory have to do with all this?" And their ideology just seeps into everything. I actually wrote an article about it once, and I have a short video you guys can find about it. But the idea that you need to defend property, that's something that they see as like a whiteness in America thing. Don Lemon once complained about this idea of, oh, this is my street. I have to defend my street. I have to defend my town. I have to defend my property. I guess it's easy to say when you're super rich newsman. He still had a job at the time. I'm sure he's not slumming it somewhere, but like, you don't think people have the right to protect their property? Yeah, people are actually against that kind of stuff. So anyway, this isn't the same. Kyle isn't a criminal, didn't do anything wrong. And I thought it would have been interesting. I had heard that Hunter and his team were thinking about making a Second Amendment argument that the laws trying to restrict him from having a gun aren't constitutional anyway. I thought that would have been interesting, especially with his dad trying to restrict the Second Amendment, and then to get out of this gun charge needing to, say, no, everyone should have the right to own a firearm, even if they're on cocaine, and appealing that after he lost and trying to take it all the way up to the Supreme Court. I thought that would have been really interesting, but he did lie, and there was a lot of evidence against him. So yes, he's a felon. He's a felon. Kyle Rittenhouse is acquitted. So people can get over it, but it is concerning. Again, when people are like, I'm a historian, and you don't even know current events. And when historians and all sorts of other people lie about current events, your memes will live forever. What happens when the false memes and the lies one day becomes history and the things that people look back on and say, well, there's evidence of these things. Look at this meme. It says this. And it's just not true. So I saw Mike Cernovich say, I used to read a lot of books and research all this stuff. And then I started seeing historians and other people just lie about stuff that just happened. And it just kind of skewed his perception and just made him question everything. Like so many things that we look back in the past, what is true and what's not true. So much of it depends on who is telling the tale and who is writing the story. Anyway. Let's move on. Oh, thank you. Please, I see Catherine saying, please share. Yep, thank you very much. And thank you to those in the chat watching. I see people watching on YouTube. I'm sure there's I see some likes on Facebook, so people are watching on Facebook. I know you guys can't see each other across the different platforms, but I do see you. And I thank you. So let's move on. The big juicy story. CBS posted this doozy. A nearly 6 in 10 majority of voters say they would favor, in principle, a new government program to deport all undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. illegally, a new CBS News poll shows. that isn't purely partisan. It includes a third of Democrats. It rises to 9 and 10 Republicans. A similarly sized majority would have local law enforcement try to identify those living in the US illegally, and just under half support the idea of setting up a large government detention centers to to sort out which people ought to be deported. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So, you know, Trump saying there's going to be mass deportations, mass deportations. That's what he's promising. And I was like, I mean, he didn't really do all the mass deportation before. He had a lot of opposition. I don't know if you guys can remember back to just a couple years ago when he was president, but people were flipping out about the border. People were flipping about you have to go through a port of entry, and if you don't go into a port of entry, you're going to run into some trouble, and they have to that's how you can get a legitimate asylum claim. Go to the legal port of entry. Don't illegally cross the border. And people are coming in with these kids, and so many people are coming over with people who they are not related to. They have to do like rapid DNA test on site. And if you separated the people with the kids, and the kids were being held at the detention facilities, people were flipping out. How dare you guys have the kids in the cages? And which, why would you want them to continuously be with these people who aren't related to them, who brought them over, who were maybe paid to bring them over, but they're coyotes, and maybe the kids, people were harmed and assaulted as they came over here. All sorts of things can happen, and did happen to those people. But even the situations where the parents were not separated with the children, there was a Time magazine cover, and it had Trump just looking down at this little girl. Well, actually, his arms are just kind of straight down, and he's just looking down, and she's just crying. She kind of looks like Boo from Monsters Inc., because I think she was in pink as well, and Boo had like a pink pajama on, and I think she had a pink shirt, and she's just crying. And the truth is that child was never separated from her mother. She was just down, standing for a moment, but the mother was talking to the authorities or whatever. But she wasn't separated. But they took that photo of that child, and they, of course, edited and just had her crying while Trump was looking down at her like, I don't care. Like, so that was the narrative. People would say, oh, the kids in the cages. And Trump went on the debate stage. He's like, who built those cages, Joe? Who built those cages? Because the answer is Obama. And there were cages once Biden was president, and they didn't want the press in there. They didn't want Ted Cruz and all kinds of the people going to the border and making a big stank about that, because they, it doesn't, it tugs at the heartstrings, because you don't want to see kids in cages or fenced in or whatever. And you wonder where are the parents, and they're stacked in together because there's so many folks and whatnot. They're sleeping under these aluminum or heated blanket things, and you're wondering what's going on. And emotionally, the visuals can just tug at people's heartstrings, and they let that override their common sense of, yeah, we obviously can't allow these non-relative people to be with the children. And every day when people break the law, we usually don't throw the kids in jail with the parents. And they did break the law. And you don't seem to really have maybe a legitimate asylum claim when you're not coming through the port of entry, and you're supposed to go to like the nearest country that's safe. But people want to come to the United States. And I don't fault people for wanting to come to the United States. It's a great place. I don't care where else you go in the world. I'm always going to be like, Eagle Screech, America, number one forever. So I understand why people want to come here. That doesn't mean that you have the right to come here illegally. So if you can't wait and do things the proper way and be properly vetted, then you just need to stay where you're at or go somewhere else. It's really that simple. But people couldn't take Donald Trump trying to get the border in order. And as soon as Joe Biden was president, he rolled back Trump policies, did executive orders, getting rid of things like remain in Mexico. You have to remain in Mexico while they actually go through your claims. Biden got rid of that. And the border is crazy. The numbers are crazy. And brilliantly, people like Governor Abbott started shipping these people to New York, to Chicago, and other places. You had DeSantis take him to Martha's Vineyard. And people realized it's not so nice when they are a burden to us and they are using up our resources, and their criminals are doing gang stuff here. And it's extended so far. In Michigan, where I'm at, there were illegal criminal gangs robbing people's houses. They get buy your security on the Wi-Fi or whatever, disable it, go in, etc., in Oakland County. So it's bad. And people have complained and they're sick of it. So this is pretty amazing. Again, we can look at this poll. 62% favor a program to deport all undocumented immigrants. Really interesting. So if Trump does want to do mass deportation, and he's like, that this is what we are going to do, you should have came in the right way. And there's a lot of people who shouldn't be here. We're going to deport you. You're going home. If he does that, it seems like the people are with him if this poll is accurate, and it probably is. And so if he wins the election, because the border is a very bad issue for Joe, very bad. So Trump does go ahead and win. Will he not have as much opposition as maybe I initially thought if there's a mandate from Americans about this? After 9/11, Bush wanted his war and Democrats weren't too keen on it or whatever. So Bush went around and started campaigning, making his case to the people. And once the people were, on board with that, a lot of Democrats started changing their tune about it. Like, oh no, we're all for it. Things change when there's a mandate from the people. Because at the end of the day, those are your voters. And you want their backing. You want them to back you again. Now, both of the candidates, Trump and Biden, will be lame duck once they win. So there's much that they can do, and maybe they'll feel empowered to do because they can get away with it. But maybe there's things that they won't do because they feel like they can get away with it as well. This kind of things going on at the border right now are not sustainable. And people are seeing that. And again, kudos to Abbott for making people share the load and realizing the plight that people in border towns had to deal with. But it is dangerous when the state of the border right now. If you guys recall the primaries, if you're watching the different debates, Ron DeSantis was saying stuff like, there's terrorists coming across the border. There's actually a fact checker who said that was false. Now, if you can come from all these different places around the world and get into the interior of the United States, like, why wouldn't you do it? If you're a bad person, you want to break the law anyway, and you're a terrorist, why wouldn't you shoot your shot? So anyway, big story about how ISIS, some ISIS connected folks got into the US. So this was I think the story broke at the New York Post. But Bill Mulligan, he's if you're not following him on Twitter, he does a lot of really good reporting about the border. Breaking per federal source familiar, ICE, in conjunction with the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, arrested Takishdan nationals with suspected ISIS ties in New York City, LA, and Philly. So, not just New York. In recent days, I'm told all 8 crossed the southern border illegally, received full vetting, and had no initial derogatory information that flagged. I'm told derogatory info / potential national security concerns flagged later on. Apparently, after release into the U.S., source was unable to say when and where they crossed illegally into the U.S. All are now in ICE custody, pending removal proceeding and an active federal investigation. This was initially scooped by Jenny S. Taylor and New York Post, who posted at least one of the individuals was caught on FBI wiretap talking about bombs. Oh, I guess that'll do it. FBI / DHS joint statement to Fox News. Over the last few days, ICE agents arrested several non citizens pursuant to immigration authorities. The actions were carried out in close coordination with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Forces. The individuals arrested are detained in ICE custody pending removal proceedings. As the FBI and DHS have recently described in public and partner bulletins, the U.S. has been a heightened threat environment. The FBI and DHS will continue working around the clock with our partners to identify, investigate, and disrupt potential threats to national security. I do want these people deported, but if someone came over here and you caught them in a wiretap talking about bombs, um, I don't necessarily want to just release them back into the wild of somewhere else, because what happens when they just kind of find their way back? I don't know what was all said on that wiretap, but I don't know. Y'all better charge them with conspiracy to commit some kind of act of terror or something. Something. Y'all do more to people who y'all set up to about kidnapping the governor. So so if, again, I don't know exactly what's on the wiretap, but it was enough to tip y'all off. I just don't want them released back into the wild and we end up back here anyway. But again, they were vetted and released. And hopefully they got them all with this group. But that doesn't mean that there's not more out there who got into the United States. And I remember DeSantis constantly saying stuff like, we'll probably have some kind of act of terror. And I don't want to hear that. I don't want to accept that. And I don't want to speak into existence. But man, there's some things that we should be concerned about. So I'm going to play this video. Acting ICE Director Patrick Lynch Littner reacted to the arrest of the 8 people.
The reporting is that there were background checks done when they came across the border, that they're from Tajikistan, which is a country listed as a country of particular concern in terms of terrorism with the State Department. Is there an issue with our background check system? Again, how did they slip through the cracks like that?
Well, listen, we have individuals that are coming across and they're done, they're done by checks, and CBP, Customs and Border Protection, is the ones who encounter them at the border. It's not us. But it's not that sometimes there's just no information on individuals. I mean, it's quite common where there's just nothing. You don't have anything. It's no criminal convictions. There's no threat information or whatever on these individuals. Or maybe these individuals are from an area that are particularly of concern, but that pops up later when you get information later on. And as soon as we become aware of any information, like in this case, we became aware, we're working collaboratively with FBI, we went out and got them.
Yeah, that's not good enough, man. We shouldn't, if you don't know who these folks are, you should not be releasing them again out into the wild to mingle with Americans, everyday people. I showed you guys a video a couple weeks ago. Someone who was coming in with a group of people. I think he paid to have like the drug cartel bring him over, and he was concerned about the folks he was coming over with. He's like, y'all need to do a better job. And this was a man who was currently breaking the law and taking advantage of our broken immigration system, saying that we need to get it together because he's concerned about the people he's traveling with. That's insane. But even they know how bad it is as they take advantage of America. So again, I do not want anything to pop off because of this. But man, we are in a bad situation with the border. And if Biden loses for any reason, it's going to be the border. And he did executive order the other day, but it's not going to really do jack dilly squat. And it's funny that you can decide to do an executive order after you told everyone that you couldn't do anything. And that's why Congress needed to pass the bill that you wanted to pass. When you could have at least showed that you learned from your mistakes and reinstitute some things that the Trump team did. I know there are things that, I mean, people always talk about Trump's presidency and like, oh, so great, so great. There's things that he did that, you could be like, but there was a lot of good things in there. There's a lot of policies that made sense. How hard would it be to reinstitute remain in Mexico? It's almost like these people want to lose. Or maybe they just feel like they can't lose. Maybe they just feel like they can't. And maybe not just because I'm not suggesting that there's a plot in place that just is going to prevent anyone from ever winning again or something like that. Like stuffing ballots. I'm not saying anything like that, but well, I definitely believe all the Trump trial stuff, they expected that to weigh the man down. Certainly. And they definitely thought that they would have more trials under their belt than the Bragg would. Excuse me. But that's not going to be enough. Sorry, it's not. Not with the border being this terrible. Not with the border being this bad. Anyway, I want to share a thread. Oh, well, some of this thread, because there's a lot of back and forth with this particular argument. But Dave Smith, he's a libertarian, he's a comedian. He's been very vocal about Israel Palestine. Now he did recently debate he debated Chris Cuomo, and he brought up some things that Chris was saying about COVID, and everybody was really, praising Dave about it. And I feel like anybody should be able to debate these CNN people when they're like, oh, we didn't bully people, we didn't do whatever. Then you can be like, just roll the tape. And hopefully there's some tape pulled up, which they did. It should be very easy to smack down Chris Cuomo. It should be very easy to smack down Don Lemon. We talked about Don Lemon lying and showed a segment that he did on an interview, which I saw more segments of that interview. And I'm like, maybe I'll just have to watch the interview, because there were so many things that Don Lemon was just lying about that I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's, oh my gosh. About Trump, about COVID. So maybe I'll have to do some more clips from that particular interview that Don did. But he was there. They all feel so comfortable lying that it's crazy. But anyway, Dave had a debate, I guess, on Piers Morgan's show, and the thread kind of went on from there. So there was a guest on there who was pro-Israel, and she was like, oh, I had a nice time, even though we disagreed. And her point was that um, no civilian death on either side of this war is justified. Let's remember who's to blame, solely Hamas. And so Dave said, I agree about not screaming over each other. Those debates are awful to participate in or listen to. That being said, the argument that 100% of the blame is on Hamas and Israel has zero responsibility for the babies killed by the bombs they drop is so absurd. I'm shocked people actually say this. Now, I'll hear people like every drop of blood is on Hamas, and this is you, especially people are saying that right after October the 7th, and Ben Shapiro has said like similar things like that, and I understand the sentiment, but it is reactions to Hamas are necessary. The defeat of Hamas is necessary, and unfortunately, you cannot guarantee that there will not be civilian death as a result of pursuing Hamas. Yet it still needs to be done because Hamas needs to be eliminated. So it's not that at least the way I look at it, it's not that Israel is not accountable for the actions that they make, but that doesn't mean that they're not taking necessary actions as a response to Hamas and what they did. Not only what they did, what they still plan to do if given the opportunity. Especially because they like that their civilians, their citizens are dying, because it makes the international community all upset, queasy, and want to turn against Israel. And that's a big freaking plus in their column. That's a good way for them to win, because they're not gonna like out maneuver them, or not outmaneuver them. They're not going to overpower Israel. So if they can defeat them in other sorts of ways, and then at the same time still survive, they're going to be happy. They're going to be happy, but that doesn't mean that it's not on Israel to mitigate civilian casualties where they can. They can't do like indiscriminate bombing, which they're not. But I mean, people say that, but we still expect people to act moral in war. The war is awful and terrible and hell. Okay. So someone responded to Dave and said, if you're holding hostages in your town/house, you're putting those babies at risk. It's their fault. Don't take hostages and hold them. You can't do that and hide behind civilians. And by the way, civilians have had people held hostage, journalists, doctors, etc. So it got into a big debate after his response to that man. Because what did he say after that? He said, if there was a hostage situation at a school, your local police just blew up the school and killed all the children, and then said, hey, it's not on me, it's the guy who took the hostages' fault. Would you accept that? It's the exact same logic. So the other man said, that he didn't say the 100% it's Israel's fault, but he said, if you're holding hostages in your town/house, you are putting the people around you at risk. Obviously, Hamas is putting the civilians at risk. They're hiding behind the people, and again, they're totally fine with martyring them. It's very evil. And unfortunately, people have to ask the question, is it worth rewarding Hamas to know that this is a legitimate, successful strategy that they can hide behind civilians and survive because people allow them to survive? you're rewarding extraordinarily evil behavior that are war crimes. So it's a conundrum. It's a conundrum. But Israel has done more than the US certainly has or would have done to mitigate civilian casualties. And I went through that some weeks back. I'm not going to go into like the big long thread of all the ways that comparatively with urban warfare, how they, you know, mitigated risk compared to like the US and other countries. But saying that it's exact same logic as if the police, local police, just goes in a school to rescue somebody and they just blow up the school or kill a bunch of people in the pursuit of a hostage and be like, well, it's just the kidnapper's fault. This isn't the same scenario at all. It's a totally different circumstance, obviously, but Dave keeps doubling down on the logic. And someone pointed out that well, he's actually straw manning the argument, because someone said nobody's saying that Hamas total responsibility for kidnapping hostages and keeping them in brutal captivity for 9 months absolves the IDF from acting morally or from minimizing civilian harm. You're actually making the exact error you accuse others of, claiming that Israel is 100% responsible for the Palestinians who died during the extraction. He said, I'm not making that error. I'm responding to people saying exactly that. He said, then help me understand what you mean here. I understood it as Israel's decision to rescue the 4 hostages resulted in 200 dead Palestinians, and therefore it is on them. And he said, I can't hold your hand through basic comprehension. What you understood it to mean was never said or implied. I'd suggest reading the tweet I'm responding to, reading what I said, and thinking really, really hard. And he said, you are strawmanning David, who clearly said that Hamas is 100% responsible for putting those babies at risk. But as I also said above, doesn't absolve IDF of the moral responsibility to protect the civilians. So in the case of a school situation that he mentioned, you obviously there's different obligations that Israel has to their people versus other people. I'm not saying that they don't have a moral obligation to make sure to lessen as many casualties as possible when it comes to the civilians, but they do have a responsibility to try to get their people back. And when people engage in firefights, when they are trying to get their people back, there's going to be, well, obviously people who shoot at them are going to die. The people who held them hostage, not looking great for them. And there's probably going to be and is collateral damage. But the numbers that Hamas put out, people have learned that their numbers are not accurate, yet people want to ignore that and just go with a number that they very quickly came out with. But regardless, they have a responsibility to try to get their people back home. And I saw somebody who did a tweet thread of all these different movies, like, oh, you cheer for the resistance when it's Star Wars, and you cheer for the resistance when it's this and that, etc., trying to make it seem like, the people of Gaza are, Luke Skywalker or something like that. And so I responded with, oh, you people, you watch the movie Taken and you cheer for the person who's trying to get his daughter back, even though it causes international, issues. Of course, you would do whatever you can to get your Liam Neeson did whatever he could to get his daughter back in that film before it was too late. And Israel had an opportunity to get these hostages back who's been over there 4 months. Some of them beaten and forced to be domestic slaves, and some people, starved and worse than that. So it's a pretty freaking good thing that they were able to get their people back. In the case of a hostage situation with police, their duty to everyone, they're the legal enforcement of that area. They have a responsibility to everyone besides, the person who is doing the kidnapping, who is maybe forfeiting their lives at that point, but they're still going to try to get everyone out alive if they can. But you can't go in reckless. And they didn't go in reckless either. I don't understand his thinking. It just really seems like he just has it out for Israel, and I don't get it. I don't get it. My issue, and I guess why I keep mentioning this and talking about it, is I don't understand people's thinking. It's just so bizarre to me. It's just so bizarre to me, because if it was like any other country, I just don't think people would act this way. And I mentioned the other day, I'm like, is it just like a biblical sort of, almost curse, I guess, like that you just be a burdensome stone to all nations? Because I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted. I would want someone to rescue me, bruh. I would want somebody to rescue me. I would want someone to rescue my family, my children. I don't have children, but I'd want to see them home. I'd want to hug them, and I'm surprised that they're alive, frankly. But I want to see them come home. But Israel has a duty to their people. And they shot their shot and they were successful. And people, I don't know, making the case that they should have not done that. That's what it just sounds like. Like it was too big of a risk and they should have just left them there. If they're not going to try to get their people back, what is this all for, man? Should they just carpet bomb them and say, hopefully we got them, and the end is the end? No, they went in there hoping to rescue their people. They do want to defeat Hamas and make sure that they can't commit another October the 7th. If they wanted to turn Gaza into a parking lot, they could have. They didn't. Anyway, Dave Smith is really going back and forth with Mark Pellegrino. I don't know where that conversation led now, but I don't understand his issues. I mean, Dave's issues here. Comparing it with the police situation it's not the same principle. It's really not the same principle. Anyway, thank you, guys. There's one more story to get through. So William Thomas, is not going to be competing with women. So he tried to issue a challenge and it was unsuccessful. So I'm going to go through the story really quickly. It's Yahoo Sports reporting it. I guess originally it's from USA Today, though. The Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, has dismissed a challenge from transgender swimmer Lia Thomas, who had asked the Swiss-based court to reject a policy that would prevent him from competing in women's races at elite competitions. In its ruling, which was obtained by USA Today Sports on Wednesday, the panel of arbitrators determined that Thomas did not have standing to challenge a policy created by swimming's International Federation, World Aquatics. The CAS panel found that for the time being, he is not eligible to compete in elite competitions through World Aquatics or USA Swimming, so the policy does not apply to him. He is currently only entitled to compete in USA swimming events that do not qualify as elite events, according to the arbitral award. Thomas is not on the preliminary entry list for the U.S. Olympic swimming trials, which begin this weekend in Indianapolis ahead of the start of the 2024 Paris Olympics next month. An attorney for the swimmer did not immediately reply to an email seeking comment. Thomas competed collegiately at Penn in 2022, became the first openly transgender athlete to win an NCAA championship at the Division I level. He had argued to CAS that World Aquatics gender inclusion policy, which effectively banned transgender competitors from competing in men's or women's races at elite competitions such as Olympic Games or World Championship, is discriminatory. The Federation's policy proposed the creation of open category races for transgender competitors in addition to categories for men and women. World Aquatics said in a statement provided to USA Today Sports that it welcomed the CAS decision, calling it a major step forward in our efforts to protect women's sports. World Aquatics is dedicated to fostering an environment that promotes fairness, respect, and equal opportunities for athletics of all genders, and we reaffirm this pledge. The Federation said our policies and practices are continuously evaluated to ensure they align with these core values, which led to the introduction of our open category. We remain committed to working collaboratively with all stakeholders to uphold the principles of inclusivity in aquatic sports and remain confident that our gender inclusion policy represents a fair approach. The arbitral award, which was dated Monday, only concerned Thomas's standing to challenge the World Aquatics policy, not the legitimacy of the policy itself. The CAS panel said in its decision that it considered his eligibility first and separately as a bifurcated issue. Following a request from the International Federation, Thomas objected to World Aquatics' request, but the panel sided against him. So, just like if there's like a trans category, whatever, you can race then. But these people, if you want to race, well, once you start taking these drugs and stuff, if you decide that's what's more important to you than your athletic career, then that's a decision that you make. And then basically you can swim for funsies. You can swim for funsies. But you definitely should not swim in the women's category. And if you're a dude, and to women out there who start taking testosterone, you should definitely not be swimming with the ladies. Once you start altering your body in that way, you make a choice. People should not have to live with the choices that you make. If you can make them because you're a grown adult, whatever, fine, you do you. But once you start expecting everyone to just conform to what you want, your heart's desires, not everybody can get what they want. And there's no good reason why you should be able to trample upon the expectations of women, that they should be able to compete against people of their similar sort of physicality. This is a dude. This is a dude. And it's disgusting that people entertain him for so long. I can't imagine how Riley Gaines felt when Riley tied with Thomas, and they're like, okay, well, Lia has to hold the trophy. And she's like, why? And like, don't make this a thing. Like, we'll send you one in the mail. And they, made those girls just get over it. They're like, we can give you some counseling or something so you can, be okay with the situation, like learn to come to terms with it. It just was not right how they treated the women at all. Someone the other day, I had a video on TikTok go kind of viral. Not kind of. It was probably like at 90,000 views with it. It's not crazy, but it could be at 100 now. I don't know. But I started going back and forth with some people. I showed a video of Dylan's, basically issuing his veiled threat, Dylan Mulvaney, of, oh, be careful about what you post online because one day he'll come back and bite you, etc. And so most people are like, oh my gosh, this is a threat. I'm not going to just bow down to your delusion, etc. Blah blah blah. And some people were like, why can't you just be nice to trans people? I'm like, what did I say was hateful? I show a video where he's like threatening me, and people are like, how dare you? It was so strange. It was kind of like, you know how Ben Shapiro was on the show with Zoe Tur, and he's like, who was a trans woman, and he's like, what do your genetics say, sir? And so Zoe just threatens Ben and puts his hand on him. He's like, you knock this off or you're going to go home in an ambulance. And everyone's just like, how dare you, Ben, say that to Zoe? How dare you? I'm like, this dude just threatened to beat the crap out of him. And y'all saying, how dare you to Ben? What kind of deluded world are you living in? And you just did not see that or care. People have done similar things to me too. Not like physically, but just online, like coming at me so hard. and saying all these insulting things. And they're like, you're a bad person. I'm like, you just called me a dog. Because I don't want to respect your pronouns. So you start calling me a dog and all these other dehumanizing terms. And you're like, oh, you're so mean, Black Tea. Okay. Alrighty. But people were like, why can't you just use the pronouns and sex? And I'm like, I'm not going to lie. And someone said, oh, you're one of those people, just uneducated. And you think that sex and gender are the same thing. And I'm like, we all believed it was the same thing up until 5 minutes ago. People use the words interchangeably. We didn't make that up. We didn't make that up. The stuff that you guys are saying now is made up. And people are like, no, trans people have always existed. Okay, people have always been confused about their identity and felt uncomfortable in their bodies. Sure. Wanting to cut off their genitals. Sure. That's been a thing for a long time. But pretending like sex and gender have always been like two separate things, like worlds away, is silly. And it's really silly because Lia Thomas believes that he's a woman, uses she, her pronouns. So that's Lia's gender, okay? So if that's Lia's gender, why does Lia want to swim with people of the different sex? Why does how you identify when it comes to gender give you access to sex segregated sports and sex segregated spaces? Why is that? It's because separating sex and gender isn't meant to actually separate them. It's meant to undermine sex. That's the purpose of that. Because otherwise, you can pretend to be a woman, you can wear a dress, you can grow out your hair long, do all the kind of stuff you do, and still compete with males because you are a male. You can still go in the bathroom with males because you are a male. You can still go to the men's prison, the male prison, because you are a male. And identifying as a woman doesn't change that. But Thomas did an interesting video because there was a bunch of people who signed on and said that, you know, he shouldn't be competing with them or whatever, and they respect his right to be a woman, but you know, it's not fair. And he's like, well, that they say they respect me, but if you respect me, then I should be able to swim with you. And that just shows, you know, why we cannot entertain this stuff. Because they're saying if you actually believe it, then you will allow me to basically get away with all this stuff. If you really think I'm the same, if you really respect me as a woman, then you have to treat me as a woman and let me into your sex segregated stuff. So that's why I don't like using the pronouns. And I'm really annoyed when people do it, when they entertain it in articles or in conversations. Don't. Because there's consequences to this. There's consequences to this. And I'm glad that there was pushback. I'm glad that Riley Gaines was very active. You know, credit to her. I do have an interview with Riley Gaines if you guys didn't see it. And go check it out on YouTube. But y'all just making things worse. And people are like, why can't you just be kind? I'm like, I don't think y'all are being kind by infantilizing them and pretending and coddling their egos. Y'all know these people are men. Y'all know Dylan Mulvaney is a man. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm going to respect him enough to tell the truth. I'm like, well, why do you have to say anything at all? I'm like, this man's trying to take away my free speech. I should just be silent. They're the ones trying to reform society, and I should be silent and just let it happen? Get out of here. Go somewhere. I don't think so. I don't think so. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. You guys can go to blacktnews.com, check out different content, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. I'm laughing because I just remembered this Candace Owens thing. We talked about her Tumblr the other day. And I didn't have a picture of it. But I found a thread of people talking about it that showed the image of it. So, and people were saying it's kind of one of the worst design things. So this is a Tumblr. And you can see the image here. I thought it was a fetus. Most people thought it was like a fetus or something. But you can see something kind of sticking out of its belly or whatever. So it just looks very strange. But this is the image. It's supposed to be. It's just her like cut out. So that little thing coming out of the belly is her hair. Her extensions rather. I mean, I'm sure she purchased them. So, but someone was like, "You really don't see it? Like this is what it's supposed to be." I'm like, "That's pretty impressive how they drew that in there." But yeah, this is what it looks like close up. So everyone's just like, "Candace, you got to change that. That looks crazy." Like, I thought like in Alien was something coming out of its belly. Someone did actually put in there in the comments the scene from Aliens. Well, not a scene from Aliens, but just the aliens that burst out of the people's bellies. So but the Venom thing was was nice. But it definitely why would you see that and just associate that with it being her outline? Which I don't love that picture either. So I don't know. Maybe she'll change it. Anyway, thank you guys. Check out my new book if you like fiction anyway. The Sea Witch. It's a sequel to my book, The Dark Mermaid. You guys can pick that up on Amazon. And I have 18 books you guys can check out. If you are on Facebook and YouTube, there's a link in the description that'll take you to some of my books on Amazon, so you guys can check out my stuff that way. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.